Hello everyone, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Grace that has recently developed and where it could go in the near future and how strong it might become. Before we get started, however, be sure to like the video and subscribe, as well as sharing this video with others. All these things do help my channel grow, and I really would appreciate it. And let's get started. So here is Tropical Storm Grace, and the low center is pretty much just north of Guadalupe right now, in the northern part of the Leeward Islands, and sustained winds are about 40 miles an hour as of the 8 p.m. update. Winds gusting to 50. Now, it actually was a 45 mile an hour storm earlier, and it actually did get knocked down a little bit. And in my opinion, it's having the same problem that Elsa had. It's just moving too fast. All right, I mean, the storm just falls apart. It can't really keep up with itself, right? Like the center might be going fast, and the convection's lagging behind a little bit. But the convection is actually looking pretty impressive. I'll actually show you that on the loop on the satellite imagery. But there's been some easterly shear that's also been really kicking it, and that's been withering down a little bit. So we'll see if it can get some strength together. Now, the National Hurricane Center says it could get some decent strength together. So current pressure is 1,010 millibars, which is up. I think it might even been 1,007 earlier. So let's look at the 5 p.m. advisory. See if it'll tell us the pressure. Yeah, so it was 1,010 then as well. So pressure hasn't changed from the last update at all. But if we look at some updates back here, like it was 1,005 millibars of pressure as of the 11 a.m. update. So pressure has definitely been going up, to say the least. And if we look at the track, it could go back up to 45 at 2 a.m., then 2 p.m. on the 15th up to 50, and then 60, all right, with winds gusting to 70 before it hits the Dominican Republic. All right, so that's a pretty strong system, like winds gusting near hurricane force, right, that kind of level. But sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. Certainly a possibility, especially if it goes south and if it avoids Puerto Rico and then hits Dominican Republic. I think it would be a little bit stronger, as opposed to if it were to take the northern edge of this track, and if it hit like Puerto Rico first and then the Dominican Republic, it'd probably be a little bit weaker, because I know the southwest side of Puerto Rico definitely has some mountainous terrain there. I mean, as a good chunk of the island does. But then what happens after that? Now, they actually have a 45 mile an hour tropical storm still intact. That is not going to be the case. I mean, if it goes over Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba, there's really not going to be much left of it. But it's 40 mile an hour storm, and maybe they think the National Hurricane Center forecasts a 50 mile an hour storm back over the Gulf once again at 2 p.m. on the 19th, which is Thursday, I do believe. Yeah, it is Thursday. It's on the 19th. So definitely something to watch. Now, tropical storm force wind probabilities for southwestern Florida and Miami. Yes, you are in it once again. But the highest chances for the Dominican Republic and the islands right now, as well as Puerto Rico. So that's why you guys are under the watches and warnings, because you guys have the highest chance of TS winds. Once it gets closer to Cuba, if there actually is something left of Grace, say it goes over Dominican Republic, then yes. If there is something left of it, they could put out some watches and warnings, and your probabilities will probably go up of seeing TS or tropical storm force winds. So here's the tropical tidbits from 2 p.m. this afternoon. I guess it still had winds of 45 miles an hour, and then has been brought down to 40. But pressure is accurate, 1,010 millibars. And notice the radius of maximum wind, only about 30 nautical miles, which I believe is about 35 miles from center. So not a big wind field at all. But if we look at the convection, like look at this convection, like it is very impressive. The dark grays and the pinks, that's some all the way down on the coldest cloud top scale. And it's almost like split into two parts. You got the convection associated near the center. We have more convection associated with grace that's kind of like almost split apart, right? Like you can see the dividing line right here. And certainly we got some outflow boundaries. It's really, there's been some southerly shear trying to come in as well. It doesn't seem to be much left of that, so that's good to hear. But you can still see a little bit of faint cloud tops trying to come in south to north. So we'll be watching out for that. But cloud tops appear to be moving from northeast to southwest, but it could run into some shear problems later with some troughing, and definitely we'll be talking about that as well. Let's look at the true color. I can't look at the visible satellite. I was going to pull that up, and then I realized, sun's going down, so not going to happen because you can't really see nothing on the visible. But you can almost see it, right? You can see Grace right there, and it's almost split, like it's split into two pieces. Definitely been an eruption of thunderstorms. If I actually go and pause this, you can see that it's just like a solid area of white, but you'll look at these blips in the middle, right? Almost look like, kind of like pimples on a person, right? Like you can see how they just erupt right before it switches to nighttime. You can see how they erupt. So there's definitely been a little blow up of storms recently, and that we'll be watching out for. We'll continue to see that pattern. See if we can get some more buildup of thunderstorms. See if they can last a long time, right? But look at these cloud tops over here. See how these blow up and they kind of get blown this way? That's a sign that there's wind shear up there, right? Like look at these cloud tops here, how they're all moving this way, and then some clouds at higher levels are moving this way. So there's definitely some combating wind steering, definitely some wind shear for that matter as well. Water temperatures are sitting around 83 degrees or so, right around St. John's, Martinique, where it is right now. And as it continues to trek, waters will go up to 84. You can see the ocean currents there as well. That's what all the lines are, in case you're wondering. Not the atmospheric steering currents, but ocean currents. But you can see 84 degrees is pretty warm. And where it goes after that, maybe 85, 86 if it can stay over water. Definitely some strengthening opportunities here. But track center is pretty much right here. And the forecast track is for it to go somewhat like this. Or maybe actually a bit further south. Maybe something like this. So pretty much going near Santo Domingo and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So once it goes over Hispaniola, I mean, there might not be much left of the system. We saw what it did to Fred. We saw what Cuba and the islands did to Elsa as well. So not looking too good here for Grace. So the question is, if Grace can get to, let's say, what the National Hurricane Center is saying, right? 60 miles an hour. Remember, Fred was only a 45-mile-an-hour storm when it crossed the Dominican Republic. If Grace can actually get up to 60 miles an hour, maybe it'll sustain itself for a bit longer when it gets over the island. Maybe there'll actually be something left of it this time. So that's something to watch too. Wind shear, though, there is some to the north, there's some to the south, but Grace, the center and near center, seems to be avoiding some of the shear. And the shear right on top of the center has fallen about 5 knots in the past 24 hours. And this was the 5 p.m. map. I'm not really sure how often they update. But notice shear around Jamaica and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. In this region right here that I just highlighted in black has dropped 5 to 10 knots over the past 24 hours as well. So we'll see some reduction in shear has been occurring and will continue to occur. So that could be a plus for Grace. Also a plus, really not much dry air. It's an elongated area of convection, so it's kind of shielding itself, right? The dry air is around it, but nothing is getting ingested into it. And there's really, like, this was all like a big mass earlier, and it really fainted away for the dry air. And this was also a 5 p.m. Map, so not made that long ago. If we look at some of the model tracking guidance, yes, the models are definitely disagreeing for sure. And that in part is because low-level center and mid-level center are not cooperating with each other, and the track models are also not going to cooperate with each other. So a very wide cone, right? Now, they pretty much agree on the next 24, 48 hours. They'll be in this sort of zone, right, going towards the Dominican Republic. But the question is just what happens after that, right? Because our cone looks something like this. It could go like north of Cuba or through Cuba. It could go south of Jamaica, south of the DR, right? And then through the Northern Caribbean, which, by the way, if it does that, would be insane because ocean heat content in the Northern Caribbean Sea right now is very, very high. So that would not be good news. And we're talking about not only sea surface temperatures, but the heat that's below the ocean surface, down in the depths. So that would be really bad if it tracked through there. But a majority of the models have it going either through the Northern Caribbean or out into the Southern Gulf. And either way, both areas are very warm in terms of the water temperatures. So that's not good news. GEFS model tracks are pretty much split in half. Like a good chunk of the models have it going south into the Northern Caribbean, and a good chunk have it going between Cuba and the Bahamas, like we thought with Fred. I mean, it did go between Cuba and the Bahamas, then it just all of a sudden dropped into Cuba. So we'll see if Fred, some updates coming on that as well, coming out soon. But 24 hours from now, probably going to be, or 24 or 36 hours from now, probably going to be somewhere around the Dominican Republic. We can pretty much say that with 98% certainty here. It's moving pretty fast too, so definitely be ready if you guys are in the Dominican Republic. But the tracks could not get any worse than the GEPS in terms of like certainty, because you got the cone that pretty much looks like this. I mean, you got anything between the east coast of the United States and like the Bay of Campeche and the Western Gulf. Like it doesn't get any worse than that. Although majority of the models do bring it into the Gulf of Mexico at some point in time. Now, what's left of it then? We don't quite know, but notice what happens. A lot of these lines turn yellow and orange in the Gulf, and that means pressures are dropping. Let me actually move this out of the way. That means pressures are dropping, and that means a strengthening storm once it hits the Gulf, which makes sense because the Gulf is very conducive for strengthening right now. Now, one thing that did alarm me a little bit, and I don't want anyone here to get alarmed, is the intensity forecast. Not only what you see here long term, but let's go over short term first. Right, remember, it pretty much has between 24, and this was made at 2 p.m. Now, if we look at the National Hurricane Center, they called for a landfall on the Dominican Republic at 2 p.m. So it pretty much has between 24 and 48 hours here before landfall, right? This is your landfall spot, right? And after that, we see a drop in strength. Then if it gets back over the water, then it strengthens again, right? So this is kind of like your lull period, right, for maybe 36 hours or so. 48 hours, it might weaken, then strengthen again. But even short term, like the fact that a few models do have it becoming a Category 1 hurricane, like before 48 hours. So this is before, like anything over here is before its landfall on the Dominican Republic. Although most models do have it a strong tropical storm or even a middle level tropical storm, right? Maybe winds of 50, 60 miles an hour as opposed to 65, 70 on the top end. And a couple do have it becoming a Cat 1 hurricane, so just know it is possible that it could strengthen, all right, especially if wind shear starts dropping. But better chance of a hurricane or even a major hurricane after that, right, depending on where it goes. So that's a new trend here in the intensity forecast. All right, we're going to look at some of the global models now. So here we have the GFS model, and by the way, newly discovered Invest 96L, so definitely some updates coming out on that soon. But here we have Grace, all right, and I want to look at the strength and the timing as well. So here we have it down here. There's the 18Z run of the GFS model. Remember, National Hurricane Center had a landfall on Dominican Republic at 2 p.m. And if we look here at the GFS model, you can see it tracks south of Puerto Rico and then just south here of the Dominican Republic, right? But then there's your landfall pretty much right there at about Monday-ish morning. Now remember, National Hurricane Center had August 16th, which is Monday afternoon. So GFS may be a slightly sooner landfall, meaning maybe less time to strengthen. You can see it pretty much comes on shore. Looks like that could be between 8 and 2 p.m. on Monday, right? But then once it interacts with Hispaniola and Cuba, there's just not much left of it. Like, I mean, the storm just pretty much completely dissipated. Then maybe its remnants could get back together near the Yucatan. But overall, the storm pretty much dissipated. And looking at the upper level winds, I mean, you can sort of see why. Land interaction had a lot to do with it. All right, but here's your surface low, or quote-unquote surface low. Could even be a mid-level center, but look at the troughing that you see in the strong upper-level winds that could be tearing the storm apart to the north. Those are going to drop south, and there you can see, all right, in this zone, all right, we have those upper-level winds. They might be thinking, okay, well, there's only, like, blues. That's not a big deal, right? Well, remember, we're high up in the atmosphere, so even the brightest color is still winds of 20 to 30 knots, which is strong enough to tear apart a system, especially at this stage. So definitely keep that in mind. And then look what happens here, right? Going to the GFS, if we have an upper level high trying to build in here, I mean, look at the wind shear coming down from the north and east. Like, that is insane. That's like winds of 60 knots, all right, in the upper levels. That's like almost hurricane force winds, except it's shear, not actual winds, not surface winds. So this thing could get sheared off big time according to the GFS model. Now the Canadian, a little bit different. They have it going north and through Puerto Rico, through the Bahamas, and then a Miami like blockbuster storm, like a landfall in Miami or the Keys, right here around 2 a.m. Thursday. They're bringing it through the Gulf of Mexico and have a landfall. When I looked at the wind graph, it did say a Category 1 hurricane, like late Saturday night into Sunday on the 22nd. So very robust. The last 2 mornings, the GFS was that way too with Fred, where they just had like a robust system. All right, so we'll definitely be watching out because even at first, back when this was considered Invest 95L, Tropical Storm Grace definitely had the potential to become a major hurricane, and models were picking up on it. So it's something we're gonna have to watch or keep an eye on for sure. European is the only one that still isn't very confident in it. So we have it going north shore of Dominican Republic, so grazing it instead of going over it. That's a big key on Monday morning. But notice what happens though. Once it tracks through the Bahamas, as you can see here, it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. It's already starting to lose some stamina, and then it's gone. Like that is graced right there, and then that's it. So they don't really have a regeneration of the storm in the Gulf of Mexico, unless you count the front coming through, and maybe it'll remerge with Grace's remnants offshore. But that's very far out. That's like 10 days out. So no promises there yet. But European, really the one that hasn't had too much faith in Grace, like from the start, since I've been looking at them. So the European model and the GFS and the Canadian do have their disagreements right now for sure. And our last model we're going to look at is the HWRF, a good intensity model here. All right, and this is the 18Z run. Now, they actually bring it north of Puerto Rico. And if that happens, I anticipate a stronger system because it's going to avoid land interaction with the other islands. So it brings it north and north of the DR, through the Bahamas, all right, and then pretty much a landfall just south of Miami, which actually, this would be worst case scenario for Miami, because if a storm center is south like this, the winds are going to be wrapped around like this. So even though the landfall is not right on top of Miami, this would still be worst case scenario. Then through the Keys, and then it only goes out 126 hours, so that's it. But they have a pretty strong system, and if we look at the surface winds here, if we can get them loaded up, like look at this. Like 96 knots, like that is pretty much a border between a Cat 2 and a Cat 3 hurricane. So, I mean, so the H-WRF, the HWRF, whatever you want to call it, definitely has been bouncing around a little bit, but they're typically a good intensity model, but they can definitely change around too. So, very strong storm with the CMC, the Canadian, and the HWRF, the GFS, and the European right now, not so much. This is something definitely to keep an eye on. We still got Fred to watch. We still got, we now have Invest 96L to watch. So very busy hurricane season, and maybe some more waves. And I saw the European, if you want a little sneak peek right here. I did see another wave right here, but then also something else maybe back here too. So European is previewing some things maybe for the future as well. So stay tuned for updates, very active tropics to cover. I am the Weather Dude, signing off. Until next time, I will catch you guys in the next video.